Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Hey, Sean, good seeing you.
We have our second guest on the show. I'd like to introduce you and everybody to Jason Perdue. I'm just going to start off. I want to dig into a little bit. Jason, you're a police officer. How long have you been in law enforcement?
I am currently a police operations lieutenant. I started my career in 1999, so 26 years ago as a full-time police officer. I did some reserve officer stuff in college prior to that, but really 1999 is when it kicked off.
So you graduated the Academy in '99.
Yeah. Yep.
But hold on. Let's go back. So in college, because I had a bad experience with some of you Cougars last week, so I'm still a little bit raw about it. But
okay.
So you're in college, and they offer a program for reserve officers.
So when I was in college, I was in a small college town at WSU in the city of Pullman, and the city of Pullman itself had an open reserve academy for their police department. So it wasn't the campus police department. It was actually the city's police department. And it was a short, you go in 3 or 4 nights a week. They teach a curriculum that has been approved by the commission. And then you graduate and you really don't know what you're doing. You're partnered up with a full-time police officer and you kind of learn on the job, I suppose. And you're really just an extra set of hands. In a college town, it's a pretty transient population with students coming and going. So they get a couple of years or so out of everybody that volunteers to do it. And it's unpaid and get to see some experience and kind of helps launch the student if they're trying to go into law enforcement, and helps the city by having some free help with things. So
do you get college credit for that?
It was completely separate from the college.
Oh,
yeah,
John,
so it was a city. It would be the equivalent of, maybe a smaller department. And reserve officers were far more common maybe in the 90s than they are now, with liability, extensive training, all that stuff now. But at the time, it was just a pretty common practice for many police departments.
John, at any of the colleges you worked at, did they have something similar to that? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But Jason was saying that was through the city, so I don't know if I don't know of how you would receive credit for that. I was just thinking when you said that, I was thinking about like experiential stuff, but there has to be a really close tie with the university, and there probably wasn't. So that was a great experience, though, I'm sure. Yeah.
It was an interesting experience. It was definitely one of those early young age. Didn't know what I didn't know.
Was it a lot of ride-alongs and things like that, or was it mostly?
Yeah, really, most of it's ride-alongs, and then there's an extra body in a uniform for large events. If the city of Pullman oftentimes helped with traffic and things like that for baseball or football games or something like that. So it was, you looked the part, you just didn't really know what you didn't know. So a lot of time spent in a car with a seasoned police officer, almost like an extended FTO process to get you going. And just when you kind of thought you knew what you were doing, you graduated and went on to move somewhere else. But there was a lot of sheriff's offices at the time, municipalities that had reserve officers that would be reserve officers for many years. Maybe they're a doctor, a banker, a school teacher, but they want some type of civil or civic volunteering, and they join the police department and come out on their own time, and they're usually required to have a certain number of hours a month to maintain some proficiencies. They go to training to some level, but like I said, the liability incurred by the city once we started having additional mandates and training was just too hard to keep up with. And the certification process, things like that, have changed quite a bit in the last 10 or 15 years. So a lot of them dropped off maybe 15 years ago. Yeah.
So I'm assuming, I'm making some assumptions, but did you know before you got into the reserve program you wanted to be a police officer?
That was my goal. I like the idea of it. The nice thing about being in a reserve program was that it does give you a little taste of what to expect. The reality is you go out and work on Friday nights and Saturday nights, so it's fun, it's exciting. You don't see the slow Tuesday mornings and the long hours of paperwork and things like that. But yes, I went to school to to get a criminal justice degree with the sole intent of being in law enforcement.
And why? Why did you want to be a police officer?
Gosh, that's a great question. I didn't come from a law enforcement family. My parents weren't in law enforcement. I didn't really know too many people in law enforcement. I think the variety, I think a young man, especially at that age, it's, the idea of sitting down at a desk was difficult. So some variety in life, a little bit of adventure, I guess. You see TV shows and drive fast and shoot guns, and it looks really appealing. And I think that's probably what draws a lot of people into it. I think now I've realized that there's a reason that there's a family lineage sometimes, and that is that it's a reliable job, it's a reliable income. It's, you're never going to get rich, you're never going to be poor. It's a family wage. It's actually a good career. But what drew me into it was the excitement of what I thought police work would offer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you graduate college or get done with college, mm-hmm. and then you start applying. You get hired by an agency and go to the academy.
Yeah. So I graduated in May of 1999 from Washington State University. Got my first job in a very small municipality in Washington. Got sent to the academy. At that time, we were the last class to go for 440 hours.
Oh, really?
It was a 3-month academy. I think our class was last. We graduated in December of 1999, and in 2000, the numbers jumped up to, I think,
720. Yeah, they went to a 720 academy after that 440.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a disclaimer there in that we did 440 hours, but things like first aid, BAC, baton, OC, all the quote unquote extras were just done after hours. So we put in a lot more than 440 hours. We just didn't do them the same way. And not everybody had to do those classes. So if you opted to do that extra training, you did it on kind of your own time, depending on how the department wanted to pay that.
Yeah, I was going to ask what the difference was, where the hours came from, but that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, mandates and things like first aid, CPR, use of force tools, that kind of stuff. And then Sean could speak more about the actual curriculum change, but a lot of other things came into the curriculum, bias policing and things like that filled up some of that time as well.
Yeah, I think in the 440 Academy, there was a lot of things left to the departments. Mm-hmm. And I think that they preferred it that way, is that once they gave the student at the Academy the core, police functions as designated by the state, then you go back to your agency, and the agency is like, these are the things we are going to focus on. And like I said, I think they liked it that way. From the feedback I got, when I went and worked at the academy, we were in a 720 academy, and like Jason's very subtly, nicely saying, like a lot of the stuff was considered filler of those hours. But
yeah, I think some of it might be perceived as filler, but it was also an opportunity for the commission, the state, to say, Sean, maybe you're the chief of police in Department A, and John, you're in Department B. And to you, John, bias policing is not important, and neither is baton or really first aid. Sean's department does think that's important, and we as a commission agree with Sean, and we're going to give it to you whether your department wants to or not. And I think that is important, because I think that it did, in a lot of ways, I think it pushed out students that were all similar, as opposed to a little bit of personality from the department.
Yeah.
Standardized training. That's what's amazing. From state to state, training is so different here in the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do, despite a lot of criticisms of the Washington state system, I think that the West Coast and Washington is certainly among well-trained officers from the academy. I really do think that we do a good job.
Well, I mean, again, not to make it too Washington-centric or even law enforcement-centric, but Washington State is only one of 6 states that has a centralized police academy. So, everybody gets the same curriculum. It's all that. Like California, I think they have 26 different police academies, mm-hmm. at least, all overseen by California Post, but all a little bit different.
Right.
A little flair. But so, Jason, you graduate the academy, you go to work. How long were you with the small agency that you started with?
I was
Smaller.
there for about 2 years out of the academy,
Okay.
and it was, when I say small, it was a six officer department. So in a fairly blue collar area, a little more rural, a different style of policing, both at that time and in that culture of policing in that smaller, more rural jurisdiction.
And so after 2 years, you go to a bigger department.
A slightly larger department, about
Yeah.
30-ish, about 30 officers, which is one of the smaller departments in the county. We have a larger city that's probably 180 to 200 cops, and then a sheriff's office that's just slightly smaller than that. So the city I'm with now, I've been with since 2002, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed in size, but for the most part stayed right around the
It's about
30
30.
officer mark.
Yeah, it's about 30. Just a little bit bigger than average size department. I mean, average is 20 or less than 20. But yeah, so and so you get to the new department, and what is your experience in that department? I mean, you start as you're still an officer at that point.
Yeah, so I started as an officer. I was a patrol officer for about 5 years, give or take, about 5 years. Some big changes happened in the department. We got a chief that was more of a big picture type thinker. Brought in a lot of new programs, some new ideas. In about 2006, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant. Probably a little early in my career, probably a little unknowing still. Always the imposter syndrome a little bit, but so I remained as a patrol officer or a patrol sergeant for a few years, and then got thrown right into our detective unit, which was still pretty new in developing as a true detective unit. And then I was a kind of back and forth from detectives for 5 years at a time to a couple of years back on patrol, went back to detectives as a sergeant. I think I was a sergeant for maybe 15 or 16 years. First level supervisor in policing is generally a sergeant. We don't have corporals, so mostly I was in detectives for that period of time, and then I had some collateral duties that I did on the side outside of detective work. That kind of
Training
as well. Ton of training. I was heavily involved in our training for the department. That transferred a little bit into working with the state level, primarily in firearms, tactics, that kind of stuff. In 2008, I joined our regional SWAT team and remained on the SWAT team for about 15 years. So again, training's kind of been my theme for most of that, tactics and training, both on the SWAT team and within the police department itself. At the state level, taught some SWAT basic curriculum, firearms curriculum, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You were on SWAT for 15 years?
Yep, 15 years. Yeah.
Holy cow. Okay. And just to say, go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to ask what training was like for that. Was it more than just your agency? And I'm going off a little bit of knowledge from Pennsylvania, where I lived for a while, where like a county would have a SWAT team, so it'd be officers from different departments who make up the SWAT unit. Is that what yours was like, or?
Yeah, we have a regional SWAT team that is primarily built with members from the Vancouver Police Department, the Clark County Sheriff's Office, so our local city, bigger city, the Sheriff's Office, and then there's outside agencies also can contribute. So it's a collateral duty. It's changed a little bit in the last year or so, but there were no full-time members. They all kind of came together from their respective locations and for pre-planned missions or for call-out type, in the moment stuff. As for the training, the mandatory training is about a 50-hour SWAT basic class, which is just the nuts and bolts of how a team is put together, what the roles are, how to do basic tactics that are widely accepted nationally, similar to the police academy. Then you go back to your own team and you refine those in the style that your own team uses, which is for the most part pretty consistent across the board. SWAT teams, on the other hand, are not consistent across the board. Depending on where you're at in the country, they can vary dramatically. Post 9/11, things changed a lot. There was a lot of money out there federally, and there were all kinds of teams built that really had no business being teams. So the training suffered a lot of times, and the response times were off. It really went from, LAPD, New York, Phoenix, Las Vegas, big teams to, more of those collateral duty teams that are more urban, to now, you can find a 6-man quote unquote SWAT team in rural Oregon that, really their capabilities aren't the same as that of, Vegas or Phoenix or something.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Two things about that I find interesting. I don't really care if anybody else does, but John, you might find it interesting. But in that location, in that area where Jason works, the smaller departments have the option to they can still receive services from the SWAT team if needed. Mm-hmm. And then they just pay an annual. Is it annual? Jay, you know this better.
Yeah, it's like an annual insurance policy. So
you pay.
If I can't afford somebody on that team, then I pay $50,000 a year, and if I need the SWAT team, they come with the whole machine, and I don't pay a bill for it. If I opt not to pay that insurance policy, I can be on the hook for the cost of 25 SWAT members coming out using equipment, using
on a 12-hour standoff or whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of overtime. Yeah, John, I'm saying that to say, with no pride, actually quite the opposite. But when this chief came into the department, very forward thinking, he's like, I want to get one of our people on the SWAT team instead of paying that annual fee. So they sent me and I tried out, and I bombed horribly. I did not make it on the SWAT team. I had a horrible day.
Let me guess, you asked too many questions.
No, I made so many mistakes. I mean, when I recount all the mistakes that I made on that test. So then they had to send Jason instead, and Jason made it and was on the SWAT team for 16 years or however long. So that thank God for Jason that he was able to do that.
To be fair, there is a little explanation behind that. And I would equate that to Sean was the first in our department to test for that position, but it was for Sean, to be honest, it was kind of like walking into a dark room. He didn't know what to expect. We had never had anybody on the team. He didn't know what the day would look like. He had a rough idea there'd be a firearms qualification, an interview, probably some physical fitness stuff. Once I went, I had a little better understanding, and that's the case with most departments. Is you partner up with people and go, hey, what can I expect that day? And for some people, they know what the whole day is going to be as they prepare. I had a little bit of that benefit by Sean being kind of our test subject, and it worked out well for me. But
yeah, you learned everything not to do in that testing.
Sure.
So going back then, I just want to make sure I hit it because I know that you went heavy on. You said you were into detectives a lot. Training, but as part of training, I want to make sure I get it right. What did you have to do with the field training program, post-academy training? You had something to do with that too, right?
Yeah. So when an officer comes out of the police academy, they're usually on a 13-week, 16-week post-academy field training with a veteran officer, and we really kind of built a new program here with the help of some other people, and really kind of refined that process. We use what's called the San Jose model, and it's 3 different coaches and an evaluation. And again, that's kind of that refinement of things learned in the academy, style of the police department, a little better further explanation of those things. It's really important in the success of a police officer, because not to say anybody can get through the academy. It is difficult to get through the academy, but as you can imagine, for a scene, for example, these two recruit officers are responding to a domestic violence scene. They kind of have to go off of a checklist, separate the parties, ask them for their birthday, and they don't really have a frame of reference, a schema, if you will, to build and understand what they're doing. They know what to do, they just don't really know the why of that.
Mm-hmm.
So really critical is getting them partnered up with somebody that can teach that and understand that to their level, but also express to them the why of it, and really kind of learn culture, empathy, all the things that we hope for in our officers beyond the black and white checklist. I mean, it really is. FTO is really the most, I think, the most critical part of learning to be a police officer effectively and correctly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, Sean, you, with your experience, you'd agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, to simplify that was a really good answer, but just like a student graduates the academy, I think they have the concepts, right? Like they understand these words, and you said checklist, mm-hmm. Like I know what to do, but now they have a incumbent officer, a veteran officer who lets them take all that information and actually apply it in real life out in the field. And they keep them safe. They give them feedback. They coach and train them. But that's where, like, again, you can do name how many scenes at the academy where you're talking to people and you ask them these questions, but then you actually try to do it to a human being who's not part of the scene, right? You pull up at the corner and get out and talk to somebody, and you just have no idea how that's going to go. Right. And yeah, so it's there in a semi-safe environment because they have the veteran officer with them, but to actually try this stuff out. And boy, is that a steep learning curve, or at least it was for me.
It certainly can be. I like to kind of describe it as you go to the police academy and you learn the science of policing. You come back here and your FTOs should teach you the art, the round those corners, and
that's a really
how to do it.
Yeah,
so you have that firm foundation, but somebody needs to mold that and teach that, just because somebody is suspended driving down the street, they don't automatically get a traffic ticket for that. Maybe you help them get their driver's license back. Maybe you see that they're going to get their child dental work, and you have to learn a little bit of the art of why we are doing what we're doing. And frankly, it took me many years to understand that. I think Sean would agree that that's not something that is easy to come by. It maybe with age and a little bit of experience, and so it's critically important to have those FTOs.
Yeah. John, did you have anything? So?
No, I like that, the description that you use, where you learn the science and then you have to go learn the art of it, because that's applying the science. And research is the same way. You have the science, but then you have the art of knowing what research questions to ask and how to approach them. And I'm sure it's the same way. So I know I'm assuming that calls are different during the day and different during the evening and night. And I've only been on a couple or three ride-alongs, and they were always at night, close to midnight. And one of them was in the state of Washington. The number of people with mental distress was shocking to me. I had no idea that officers had to face that many people with under mental distress. And then, I mean, that takes a lot of art because you have to, try to understand a lot of what's going on with that person, why they're doing what they're doing. So I'm wondering, is that something that you see? Because you're in I was a ride along in a large department of but I'm sure you still see it in smaller departments. And has it increased over the years? Has there been more and more mental issues that you're dealing with as a police officer over the last few years, do you think?
I would say that has been the greatest change in law enforcement over the last 5 years, is just the extent of mental illness. They kind of fall in that range of, are we enforcing law against these people versus the social health of just that, getting them assistance and resources. They tend to fall in that gap. And I think that I can kind of I think Sean will probably understand this, is that in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was very little of that. So policing was, you did something you know is against the law. I'm the police officer. I show up and we deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difficult thing that we're dealing with now, is field training officers may have come from a time when crime equals punishment. New officers, and I think it's fantastic, the new officers see the world differently than we do. And so having those trainers that can go, hey, yes, this guy stole a candy bar from the store, but there's a lot more to this. And almost, I would say probably, maybe not majority, but close to the majority of people that our officers are dealing with as a result of a 911 call, not self-initiated stuff, is probably has some element of mental illness related. Yeah. And it is a little bit different where we're at, because there's not a lot of resources here. So generally, people that are suffering from homelessness or mental health issues go closer to where those resources are.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of those resources just based on the size of our city. But it's just natural. It's natural human. It's natural animal. You go to where resources are, or you. Yeah. But eventually, those resources, even with those resources, push that population out further and further and further. So even in a rural community in, Eastern Washington, they're going to run into some of these problems. And that's the $1 million question, is what's causing these problems in this generation of young people and even, older people, is that mental health issue. That little extra change has been pretty profound.
And you said it's like the last 5 years you've noticed a difference. Do you think that's COVID related? Because I know there's a lot of studies showing that mental health for everybody has changed quite a bit since COVID. Do you think that's part of it, or do you think it's just generational stuff?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I don't know if that's coincidental, or I think it was, we were kind of going that direction anyway. I think COVID certainly had to do with it. Now, I'm not saying that as COVID, the virus, caused mental health problems, but I think that shutdown, that change in just communication among people, interacting face to face with people. There's a lot more now that's done virtually, that by phone, and then closing everybody into their houses, right or wrong, changed a lot of perspective on the world for a lot of people. Yeah, distrust. There was a lot of that change in trust and distrust of the government and distrust of the medical field. I mean, a lot of things changed, and I don't know how that impacted things, but we were certainly going that direction prior that perpetuated it.
Yeah, isolation causes a certain level of mental health issues, and now you have a whole country isolated basically because everybody has to stay away, and then the communication face to face is gone. So there's a lot of studies in the psychology literature about that, about isolating people and the mental health the mental health issues that causes. And now, I can tell a difference in my community in the last 5 years. So that's why you're right. It probably exacerbated the direction things were already heading. Maybe that's interesting. Yeah.
And John, I'd ask you is, with kids, and this goes back probably more like 15 years. Kids are in the same room, but a lot of times with technology, a phone, an iPad, a video game. Do you see that from your perspective as isolation? Even in a room full of people, do you think that the damage of isolation is still being done?
Yeah, I mean, that is still, so isolation, I think you can think of it more as interactions. And so you can be in a crowded place and still be isolated if you're not connecting with anybody. So that can make a big difference. And then, technology has pushed that forward, because I remember the first time that I had a couple of nieces that I was in the room with, that we were all having there's like 8 of us in there. And I realized they were having a conversation with each other on their cell phone, like texting. And I was like, are you guys texting each other? And they're like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, they kind of laughed. And I thought that was so strange. This was 12, 15 years ago. I thought that was so strange. Now it's like, I'll even maybe I shouldn't admit it, but like I'll text in another room to where my wife is instead of just getting up and walking in there. I'll just text and say, "Hey, da da da
Oh,
da."
John.
Yeah, I know.
John.
It's just it's become too easy. So that's, I guess, when you're texting people, that's not technically as isolated, but it's different from face to face. But then you can be in a large group of people not connecting with anybody and be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason, I wanted to get. I spent a lot of time just kind of talking about your past, like your work experience, all of that, to set up to get to this question because I'm really intrigued what you think are the current problems facing law enforcement. I've heard some catchphrase or some how would you say, like recruiting and retention. I've heard those, but what do you think? What are you seeing? Current trends in law enforcement? What are the issues?
Well, I'll start with that recruiting and retention. I think we're in a world now that, a lot of people don't stay in the same career for 25 to 30 years. I think that in law enforcement, that's probably healthy. I think that, I just recently saw a number, whether it's true or not, that your average police officer encounters like 200 critical incidents in their career versus 5 for your average person in their life. I mean, that's pretty profound, right? So when you mix that mental health aspect along with that exposure, so I think that the retention part, I think cops should be cops for 10, 12, 15 years. I think that's probably a good lifespan for that career and the impact to be good at it and still have a healthy approach to it. Some can do longer. I think it's certainly within the ability of a lot of people to go longer than that. But so retention and hiring I think those are just things that we're dealing with as a society in all areas of employment. I think with the economy the way it's been over the last few years, we kind of skipped over a group of people. I think Sean and I would both agree that, when we got hired, it was pretty common to be, your early 20s, mid 20s coming into this profession. And I think that we skipped a bunch of those people that went on to do other things. And when the economy is good and there are a lot of jobs available, government jobs are kind of a second choice, I guess, in a lot of cases. So they went on to do tech or they went on to do other things because they didn't need that stability of a government job like we hear about. I think I'm pretty excited about the fact that we have so many young people right now. I was up at the Academy a couple of weeks ago and it looked like a younger group. And it was good to see that trust. I think that we went through a period of time where young people didn't really like the idea of being in law enforcement because the public perception of policing and what policing was going through. I think policing is more aligned now with young people and what they expect from their police, and I'm pretty excited about that. Providing some empathy, therapeutic courts, getting people out of the system instead of in the system, and so I think we better align now with the young people. So I think we're going to be able to recruit and retain better now. It's not that us versus them mentality. I mean, even in the late 90s, we were post Rodney King. It was still a little bit of that us versus them mentality, and training new recruits to carry their food tray in their left hand to always have their gun hand free. I mean, that tells a recruit that they should expect to use their gun in a restaurant. And
Right.
And I'm not saying preparedness isn't good and awareness and vigilance and all those things aren't good, but man, talk about ingraining an opinion into people. If you weren't self-aware enough to go, I don't need to treat this 13-year-old like a criminal, then you can see how policing can go. So all that to say, I think retention and recruiting is going to be a little bit easier. I think we're headed in the right direction for what policing should be. As far as the job and doing the job, I think mental health and substances is really, that's a challenge. We're a police department, so we get criminals. The fire department deals with fires. Who deals with this section of our population that's unhomed, that is on substance abuse and those kinds of things where they can't. That's a social problem. That's not a criminal problem. That's not a fire problem. That is a social. I think we need a third big social department that helps with that stuff. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge moving forward in policing. How we staff our people, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so. Two things, because I want to get back to John. His eyes lit up when you talked about carrying a tray in your left hand, but and rightfully so. But the other, what you just said about just an offhand thought, but like anybody, if you think about it, who doesn't know if they need help and they don't know what else to do, they call the cops. Right? Like whether it's criminal or not, it's like something's going on. We call 911. We need the police here.
Yeah, my pipes are broken in my house. I'm going to call the police. I mean, they're the social service, right?
Right, and so there is a lot of that where, and I'm being very general, and I don't want to stereotype a person, but like there's a guy without a shirt on standing on the corner down the road from me, swinging a giant branch around to cars. And with only that information, me as someone, what do I do about that? Well, I'm going to call 911 and I'm going to ask the police to come here. Right. And so now the cops are en route. We have a behavioral health crisis going on, but I don't know what to do other than to get cop cars down there. And so to your point, like, this re-examination of like, is that what we want our police? Is that what we need our police doing? That's rhetorical because I don't know. I think you both know I don't claim to have any answers, but I definitely don't have the answers to this. But.
Well, and then to take it from where you just got to, I called 911 and the police show up, and frankly, the police are the only ones there to handle the problem. So this guy's on the corner and he's got a giant branch. He's probably going to hit a car or somebody, at least instill some fear in people. Well, the police are there, so what solutions, what tools do the police have? Take him to jail for, let's find a crime. Well, I guess he's kind of disorderly. We can go disorderly conduct. So what, we write him a ticket and hope he shows up to court for being mentally ill after he gets out of jail, if the jail will even take him. So it's kind of kick the can, you kick the can down the street. And unfortunately, we put our cops in a position where you have to be the solution. But that isn't maybe the right solution. So I really do think we need to bolster up that municipal government intervention that's not police or fire response. We're lucky here in our county. We have a new program that's kind of a joint between the police and the fire department, and they'll go to things like that, maybe try to get this guy to a hospital, to some kind of mental help. It could be so many different things that are causing this problem, but they do respond to that type of thing, but they rely on us to make it safe. But they also go to things like the 911 caller that calls all the time because she has bed sores and can't get out of bed, and that ties up the fire department. So this other entity will go and handle these perpetual issues, and so we're kind of getting there, but you guys know better than I do about mental health and addiction, is that oftentimes it's not desired by the person that needs it, the help. And so we're fighting this fight consistently. And by fight, I don't mean like literally fighting with these people, but we're trying to help them. We've got therapeutic court now. So we're, the things like somebody, for me, and Sean knows this about me, is I don't like ticketing people into poverty. It's a big pet peeve for me. Some cops will go out there and they will go, I'm going to stop that car right there because it's a beat up, nasty looking car. Well, that's probably somebody that can't afford a ticket. So let's not focus our attention on them, but let's play out that situation where, I'm driving on the road and I go, that car's got expired vehicle license from a year ago. So I stop the guy. He says, hey, I'm just on my way to work. I'm trying to get to work. My license is suspended and I don't have insurance. Well, is insurance important? Of course it's important. But I can give this guy more tickets and hope that he fixes that problem, but he can't afford it. He's trying to get to work. So what, does he not go to work? So for me, I'm not an advocate of crimes of poverty or just, lack of economic ability. So I'm really happy with this therapeutic court, which is we'll have the Department of Licensing in court. We'll have different entities that they can go to right now to get their driver's license situation handled, and try to get them back out of that hole instead of just digging that hole deeper. And we've both met plenty of cops that go, oh, the guy, Sean's suspended. I'm going to sit down the street from his house and just wait for him.
I'm going to wait for him to leave.
And you're preying on somebody that doesn't have a choice. And heaven forbid we're in that situation where I'm sick, and when I go get medicine, somebody just gives me a shot to make me more sick. Like, what good is that doing for anybody, So socially, we're trying to get there.
So this therapeutic court, is that something that the state of Washington has already, or is this something you're saying would be good to have? They already have.
It's something that we're just starting. It's kind of popping up in different different district courts and municipal courts to kind of address those low level quality of life, things like that. So not every court has them, but they are becoming far more common now. Yeah,
I like that. I had not heard.
And it's victimless stuff. It's not, if I go and light Sean's house on fire, I'm probably not getting therapeutic court in return. But if I'm driving, or if I have a driving offense or a possession of a controlled substance, something like that, and I can get into a therapy, and then a year from now not have any more offenses, and keep my record clean, they'll expunge it. All that comes together. It's the typical thing where we trespass somebody that's homeless and they don't have they don't have any ID. Well, now what? So let's help them get ID. Let's help them get services, because they can now navigate that. So it's help with people that need that help. And as you guys both know, there's people that are raised without any kind of structure in life, and adulthood without structure can be a pretty big challenge.
Can be rough. Yeah, that can be rough.
Yeah.
But to Jason's point, I just really want to put a fine point on this, is at least in Washington, because he said a couple of times suspended license. Well, that generally happens when you don't pay your tickets. Generally, there's other reasons, but I'm driving down the road, my tail light's out, whatever it is, I get stopped, I get a ticket, and I don't pay. I don't go to court. I don't pay that ticket. I just turned a blind eye to it. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Licensing then suspends my driver's license. And so back to Jason's point is, I don't have the money to renew my tabs because it's $326. I don't have the money to pay the ticket, but I still need to drive to work. Uh-huh. Because from a list of priorities, I want to pay my rent and buy some food or whatever. Yeah. And so now I'm driving down the road, and I get stopped by the police. And I'm going to work, or trying to go to work. But the police officer finds that my license is suspended, and that I don't have insurance, and I have expired tabs on my car. And so I love what Jason has said about this idea of let's try to help people. Let's not just try to pot. But on the flip side of that, because I do want to be respectful to the police officer in that situation, where he goes, I want to help this guy, and whatever action he takes. But if, let's just say he goes the other way and lets that guy drive away from that traffic stop, and he gets 2 intersections down and gets into a vehicle collision, I'm now the officer who stopped me trying to be a good person and solve a problem, let me drive away with no insurance, expired tabs on a suspended license. And so Jason I'm trying to tee it up for Jason, but so those aren't the only 2 choices. But what's the officer to do now to go, well, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to let this guy drive. And so I have ticket him, arrest him, tow his car, let him go scot-free. Somewhere in the middle maybe is I'm trying to get back to the art that you're talking about, right? The art of policing. And so what do I do there as the cop?
Yeah, and that's the challenge. I mean, like you said, my taillight's broke, but I can't afford to fix it. Mm-hmm. So I drive to work, and now I get a ticket for the taillight. Well, I couldn't fix the taillight. I can't pay the ticket. So all of those things, I do agree with Sean. The insurance is tough. I mean, somebody collides with John and his family, it shouldn't be your responsibility. If we all should have our social inputs here. So the insurance thing that's a difficult one, but the perpetually chasing after the same person,
Yes.
To me, that's not helping things. Now, some people will argue, and I've talked to prosecutors that will say that therapeutic court, no way. We're widening the net. We're getting more people into the system that don't need to be in the system. There are a lot of prosecutors that are very opposed to it. The county to the north of us, they don't want any part of it. It's, you commit a crime, that crime and punishment. That's the way it goes. I think it is. I think we're just chasing our tail, though. If we think that that's going to fix the problem, let's try to get less suspended drivers on the road and let that fix the problem. So that's policing. That's social change, and that's staying current with social change and the desires of our community. I mean, police comes from the term of city, polis, which is we should be representing the needs and the demands of our city and the norms of our society that we're in. So we have to adapt. We have to change. Now, when it comes to truly bad people and truly the violent crimes and things of that nature, that's when victims are involved, we treat that differently because we do need to protect our society from that. But there's also a socioeconomic side of things, which is the police and the government in a lot of ways have for years kind of held people with lower means. They kind of hold them down, and there's a built-in structure to that I think it's important for the police to recognize and start to kind of dismantle a little bit. Yeah. And that all goes back to my original point with recruiting, which is I think our young people see that, and they don't want to just crack heads and throw people in jail. They're a little more interested in solutions and not just the same outcome, which is inspiring. I like it. But going back even further to that FTO comment or the conversation about FTO is sometimes those FTOs come from a time when those two things can sometimes clash a little bit. But I think as a society, we're starting to put it together.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, you get a young idealistic person who's like, I want to change from the inside. I want to be a part of the solution. I go to the academy, I graduate the academy, and then you get into a FTO car with maybe someone who's from another generation who doesn't share those ideals. That collision of ideals, it could be damaging, but it could also, I don't know, it could be interesting.
Well, and like Jason said, some of these people have had 200 been involved in 200 traumas, and just the buildup of even vicarious trauma, like even having to experience somebody else's trauma has an effect over time, and it changes how you see the world. So now you have all that experience and you see the world this way, and a new, like you said, idealistic person comes out, and you feel obligated to teach them how bad the world is sometimes, I'm sure, and that can, that's a really bad combination probably.
Well, it is. And when Sean's my idealistic young cop, and I've been doing it for 20 years, and we're going to the same house that I've been to 15 times for the same 17-year-old kid that's slapping his mom and throwing paint on the walls. And I roll my eyes and go, oh, here we go. How are we just going to get done with this today? Because we'll be back in another week. Idealistic Sean's going, well, let's help them. Let's figure out a solution. And I'm like, look, man, I've been here for 15 years. There is no, so there's reality too. And it's policing. That's why I say, I think a 15-year, 20-year career that's a full career. You start seeing the world differently when you've been exposed for that long. And I'm fortunate that I've been in a relatively small department, aside from the SWAT stuff, which was pretty busy and all around, but I haven't been exposed like I would if I was in a city like Portland or Chicago or Seattle, where that tempo's even faster, Las Vegas, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up Vegas, but just when I worked in Vegas, they had it was unwritten. There was nothing written down, but in between 10 and 12 years, generally they were unplugging cops off the street, either putting them at the academy or in training or on bikes on the strip. Something that they had identified that around 10 years, in between 10 and 12, they just couldn't do it anymore. They need to unplug. They give them a couple of years away from the street, so to speak, and then they let them go back. But I saw
really
so many guys on mountain bikes riding down Las Vegas Boulevard, well, I've been on the street 11 years. They told me I had to unplug for a year. But,
yeah. And it is interesting to see that progression and how people change, right or wrong, throughout that career. You start out, like I said, when I was a reserve officer, I didn't know what I didn't know. You could have told me anything and I would have gone out and done it. Then you start to learn a little bit and you kind of have that ability to go, well, I kind of know what I'm doing here. You start having a little bit of confidence in yourself, but you still really don't know what you're doing. And then by the time you kind of know what you're doing, so it's just that progression through a career is pretty interesting to see. Yeah.
So I can't skip this. John, what do you think about this idea that, whether it's in the academy, or it's usually in the academy, right? But I'm at the cafeteria every day for lunch, and they make me carry my tray, and I'm going to go further. They make me carry my tray in my left hand so that my gun hand is free. And then when I leave, if let's say I'm getting ready to go to DT in the gym and I'm carrying a bag, I have to carry the bag in my left hand so my gun hand is free. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just, what are your thoughts from the brain standpoint? What am I training my brain to do?
Yeah, if you're doing that every day, you're wiring in the idea that somebody today is going to try to kill me. I might have to pull my gun today, especially if you're in the safety of the academy. But then, once you leave, it's just like a war zone, it would seem like. So yeah, you're training your brain to be ready to do that. So then if there's, once that just the water level goes up a little bit. So now you're out in the public and somebody does something that surprises you, then that's going to be your brain waving the flag, sounding the buttons like, now's the time. This is what we've trained for.
Get your gun out. Get your gun out.
Yeah, it's really, I think you guys call it training scars, but it's actually, a pretty dangerous way to go about it, because you're training people that something is going to happen, and so you've got to be ready. And I think, like Jason said, you have to have some awareness so that you're prepared. There has to be some preparedness, but then there's a difference between preparing you for something and then training you every day, because that's what the military does, because you need to have your gun out every day in the military, but not on our streets necessarily. So yeah, I just see it as just wiring the brain to respond in a certain way. So the minute the water level goes up, your back channel takes control and does what it was trained to do. And that's part of its training. So the idea might be, no, we're just telling them to be ready because that's our preparation, but you don't realize that when they're practicing that every day, that becomes their training. And now when the water level goes up, that's what they fall back on. And so they don't understand what something is, so they pull their gun because that's what their training is.
And then to tie this back to our last guest, who was also a law enforcement officer, he was talking about the idea of having your gun in your hand and training that enough that oftentimes that's the tool that you're going to go to because it's in your hand. So do you see and I want to be really clear. I feel like I'm down on law enforcement a lot. I'm not. I want to be realistic that there's a generation of law enforcement officers that tried to train new people, especially, this generation. Jason's saying there's younger people coming in and they're like, I don't know if they have the wherewithal to, fight somebody or to use force. So they go really hard on this idea of you got to be ready. Everybody's trying to kill you. Every car stop could be your last. I got a litany of things I could throw at you right now. They're all the same. It's all the same rhetoric about there's this older generation of cops, meat eaters, who are so concerned about this new generation not being ready for, the ultimate use of force, which is taking a life if you had to, that they go over the top with it. So it's the whole carry a drink in your left hand, carry the tray, or in your non-dominant hand, but all of that, and not understanding what you're saying. What we're trying to do on this podcast is talk about, like, do you understand how that affects your brain, how powerful that message is if done every day for 3 months, that you're just wiring the back channel.
And then if you spin it, because now I'm thinking about police officers like Jason, you and your colleagues, the general public is also being trained by YouTube and TikTok, and they see, so many instances where police officers are maybe misbehaving or doing the wrong thing or being overly aggressive, and it's just filmed, and it just, it has 300,000 views, 1 million views. And so now, as somebody that's not in law enforcement, I'm looking at my phone for half hour a day, maybe more longer than that, but maybe I see about 30 minutes worth of police officers being very aggressive with people, and I'm seeing that every day. That's training my brain. As soon as I see that, as soon as I see the uniform, and I better clear this, get clear of this place. And I think sometimes I've talked to some police officers before that think people are being dramatic when they say, I don't want to take my hands off the steering wheel because I don't want to get shot, or I don't want to open my door. And you're like, come on, quit being so, I'm not going to shoot you. Like that doesn't make sense. But in their brain, it makes sense because they've seen so many videos like this that they really are scared and aren't sure what to do at that point. So then the other side of it is that the general public is also getting trained because of our social media. Their brain is getting trained. The cops are probably going to hurt them or try to kill them. And then police officers are being trained, maybe not, hopefully not as much anymore, but that they have to keep one hand free just in case. And that just, that creates a lot of unnecessary problems when those two collide.
Yeah, and I think that one hand free is kind of just an example of the overall approach of what police training used to be, which is always ready. Someone's going to get you. If it's not today, like Sean said, if it's not today, it's tomorrow. You go through this house, and there's a level of, that competence that has to be there. Sean and I trained a long time together and taught. I truly believe that as a young cop, it was trained as the world's out to get you, which should have been trained as be prepared in case something does come to try to get you. Be ready to protect people, be ready to protect yourself. But it's fear biting. It's teaching a dog to bite out of fear because something's always ready to get it. This most recent time I was up at the Academy, it's funny because it built into me such a belief that that's what the Academy is, that when I went and met with our recruits, and all the other recruits are sitting in the lunchroom and they're on their phones and their heads are down, they're laughing and chatting. I was like, what is going on to this place? And then I had to stop and remind myself that we need to have places to relax. We need to be able to come to the police station and let our guard down. Take your vest off and cool off and write your reports. Interact with people. There is a time, the color thing where, he's conditioned black all the way to conditioned white, and never be outside of conditioned yellow. And how about relax when it's an appropriate time to relax? How about when you walk into the store and a child walks up with his mom, that you interact with a kid the way that you would want your child to interact with an adult too, and be a human and show there's a human side. Now, if somebody comes in to rob the bank you're in, be prepared to deal with that kind of as a surgeon. Be prepared, be very competent. But I think just putting in that fear, that warrior mentality, you have to be able to be a warrior at times, but there's also times when you need to be an artist. And I think that we've missed that. We've gotten better. I think Sean would agree that the training has gotten better as long as we embrace it. We have to be willing to express vulnerability at times. And our department's really turned, like many in the area have, that turn toward officer wellness and understanding that we have to have time off. That hypervigilance is just destroying our bodies and our approach to the world. Dr. Gil Martin's the classic, he started this whole idea that the world around us is what causes us to react in a certain way, and we have to have friends outside of the job and training that's not always out to get you stuff. And the people that I admire the most in this line of work are the people who are professionals and can go to work on the use of force stuff when it's appropriate, but they're also able to go to a senior citizens luncheon and sit down and have a conversation. It is a balanced approach, and it took me a lot of years to figure that out, but it definitely makes a healthier cop, and it makes a healthier community for sure.
Yeah.
Very well said. Yeah, I agree with that.
John, we're getting to the end of this episode. Is there anything that I didn't cover? Any questions that you have?
That went way too fast.
I know.
Too fast.
I know.
It was
Every
just like,
week.
I feel like we were just warming up.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that Jason, some of the points he addressed was what I was interested in, was like the mental health aspect and the viewpoint that you take, like your position that you take when you're dealing with people. I think those are all really important.
Yeah.
That's good.
Jason, was there anything that you wanted to say that when you were thinking about coming on the show that you didn't get to say, that we didn't ask you?
Oh man, there's a lot. After watching your episodes, there's so much that translates to policing, and my whole thought this morning was we're going to talk about like how a veteran officer's schema is so different than a new officer, and back channel. I had a whole script, but we went through an hour like it was just a couple minutes. So maybe we do episode 2. Maybe
what I'm hearing is we need to have you back on again. That's what we need to coordinate, and then so there's some topics that we didn't get to that we need to get to.
Yeah.
So
there's really no profound thing. I think that for a period of time there was some concern of where policing was going, with Ferguson and all the way back to Rodney King, and then it goes back into the 60s. The up and down of law enforcement and policing is, if we don't change with society, we're going to be stuck. And I was thinking about how those new officers are more geared toward what society wants now. It kind of reminds me of when Miranda was introduced, and cops were, the old school cops were going, criminals are going to
can't do police work anymore.
And by the time I got into law enforcement, I was like, well, of course people should know that they can talk to an attorney and that they don't have to talk to us. And what do you mean? That doesn't sound like an obstacle at all. And I think that's where we're at today with a lot of, with the change in possession of drugs and a lot of that stuff. Initially, we kind of get put back on our heels, but the reality is, if we're not changing, we're going to be stuck. I remember, Sean, you were still in the job when we started walking away, quote unquote, walking away from suicidal people that had guns, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. Suicidal and homicidal is their brother and sister, right?
Yeah.
I will never walk away from somebody that's armed with a shotgun in their house. And then now I look at it and I think, well, why? Why would we use force against somebody because they want to use force against themselves? It doesn't make sense. So all that to say, I think that we're headed in the right direction. I have a lot of hope for policing. I think we're getting good young people that want to do the right thing, and call it idealistic or just their heads in the right place. But I think we're going in the right direction. Yeah. But we still need strong training. We still need to talk about risk versus reward versus, driving too fast, putting the public at risk, making entry on somebody's house when we shouldn't, and technology and the use of technology. That's a whole nother area that we could dive into, is the use of technology and tactics. And because ultimately, it sounds like I'm kind of a feel-good cop right now, but my history is primarily in the use of tactics and use of force and all those things that we haven't really touched on. So yeah, there's a lot of room for us to talk about a lot of different topics.
I like
second
that
episode coming up.
Yeah, I like the technology and tactics topic. That would be really interesting, I think.
It's been fascinating to see the use of drones, the use of robots, pulling away from the use of police dogs, while they still have a great place in our world. You can fly into a room and talk to somebody and offer them a safe way to surrender. It's just, you're not putting people in harm's way. You're not pushing that that decision making time
Yeah.
frame and speeding up that decision making and putting that on people that have never made those decisions. And then the use of force, the application of force is a little more surgical. It's a little more specific at the time that it needs to be done or avoided. I think police use of force is probably on the decline right now for a lot of reasons, and we're getting there. The state of Washington's progressive, and sometimes that's painful, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Well, what I took from this is, I spent a lot of the beginning of this episode setting up your CV, your resume. And so when I hear somebody with, 15 plus years on SWAT, training, detective, all the things that you have, that you're hopeful, that makes me feel a little bit better today. So, I don't know that you're going to be painted as overly optimistic as a cop. I think you have a lot of experience. You've seen a lot in your time. And for you to sit here and tell us that there's hope, that we're moving in the right direction, it makes me feel good today.
That's good.
So
to hear.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good to hear.
And it's a reminder. I remind all of our new people, find something in the community that you can give back to, that you can be proud of, that you can go talk to kids in the school, do things that remind you that the world isn't always bad. If you're always in the bad, that's how the world's going to look. And there's optimism is a good way of putting it. Yeah. And maybe next time we can share some stories about Sean. I have a catalog of them.
Oh, I want to hear that. Yeah.
Let's not do that. None of them are good.
Sean was a good cop. He did a good job.
None of those stories are good, John. I promise you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Jason, thank you for your time. I know you have a lot of stuff going on. So for you to carve out this hour for us it's special for me. We work together. We're friends. I've known you a long time. So to have you on the show is special for me. So, John, thank you,
Jason,
for all of everything that you bring and brought. And don't forget to check out John's. I say it every week. I'm committed to it. John's TikTok is amazing. Brain_dude. And then all of our socials. I try to keep up on our socials too. Everything is John Teaches Sean on Blue Sky. We're not on X, but Blue Sky, TikTok, and I guess that's our socials. But just
YouTube.
The show's on YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon. But I go to iHeart, so that way you don't have to watch me. You don't have to see me do this. That's the thank you both so much. And John, I'll see you next week. And everybody else, take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Sean.